Welcome to Innovation Pulse, your quick, no-nonsense update on the latest in clean tech and EVs. First, we will cover the latest news. Canada is transforming its energy future with renewables, while strategic solar panel designs enhance ecosystems in Colorado. After this, we'll dive deep into small modular reactors, exploring their potential to revolutionize nuclear power with faster deployment and enhanced safety. Canada faces a pivotal moment in its energy future, with electrification and renewable energy at the forefront of transformation. The speaker, involved in shaping energy strategies in Ireland, sees a similar ambitious path for Canada. Canada's current energy system heavily relies on fossil fuels, largely exported to the United States, leading to inefficiencies and energy waste. A shift towards renewable energy, such as wind, solar, and hydroelectric power, could drastically reduce energy waste and improve efficiency. Electrification in transportation and heating, using technologies like electric vehicles and heat pumps, could significantly cut energy use and waste. The transition requires upgrading Canada's electrical grid for reliability and resilience, creating jobs and ensuring stability in energy pricing. Drawing from Ireland's experiences, a collaborative and inclusive approach is crucial for Canada, involving diverse stakeholders to achieve sustainable energy, independence, and decarbonization by mid-century. Research from Colorado State University and Cornell University indicates that solar panels in Colorado's grasslands can help reduce water stress, improve soil moisture, and enhance plant growth by over 20% during dry years. This study, published in Environmental Research Letters, explores the benefits and challenges of placing photovoltaic arrays in grassland ecosystems, especially under drought conditions. The research shows that plants benefit from the shade and additional water collected by the panels, which boosts their growth. While solar panels can reduce sunlight for plants, strategic design could maximize environmental benefits, aiding ecosystem stability and renewable energy production. The study emphasizes the potential for solar panels to restore grassland ecosystems and improve water usage, suggesting that small design changes could yield significant benefits. Future research will focus on different grass types to further understand these dynamics. And now, pivot our discussion towards the main clean tech topic.
All right, everybody, welcome to another deep dive on Innovation Pulse. I'm Donna, and as always, I've got my co-host Yakov here with me. Today, we're tackling something that might surprise a few of you: nuclear power. But not the nuclear power your parents argued about. We're talking about something called small modular reactors, and honestly, this could be a complete game changer for how we think about clean energy.
Thanks, Donna. Yeah, I'm Yakov Lasker, and you're absolutely right. This isn't your grandfather's nuclear power plant. When most people hear nuclear, they immediately think of those massive cooling towers, decade-long construction projects, and let's be honest, the occasional disaster that makes headlines. But small modular reactors, or SMRs as the industry calls them, are basically flipping that entire playbook on its head.
Okay, so lay it on me. What exactly makes these small and modular? Because when I think nuclear reactor, I'm still picturing something the size of a small city.
Right, and that's exactly the mental shift we need to make here. Traditional nuclear plants are these massive beasts. We're talking about gigawatt-scale facilities that can power millions of homes. SMRs are intentionally designed to be under 300 megawatts per unit. To put that in perspective, that's enough to power maybe 200,000 homes instead of 2 million homes.
So they're literally just smaller versions of the same thing?
That's where the modular part comes in, and this is where it gets really interesting. Instead of building these reactors on site like we do with traditional plants, which is essentially constructing a custom nuclear facility from scratch in the middle of nowhere, SMRs are designed to be manufactured in factories, Think of it like the difference between building a custom house versus buying a manufactured home that gets delivered to your lot.
Okay, that's a pretty compelling analogy. And I'm guessing this factory approach solves some of the massive cost and time problems that have been plaguing nuclear power?
Exactly. You've hit on what might be the biggest advantage here. Traditional nuclear projects are notorious for taking more than a decade from the time you start investing money until you actually start generating electricity. We've all heard the horror stories. Projects that were supposed to take 5 years ending up taking 15 or 20 years, with costs ballooning from billions to tens of billions.
And meanwhile, if you took that same money and invested it in wind or solar farms,
You'd be generating clean electricity in months or years, not decades. That's been nuclear power's Achilles heel in competing with renewables. By the time a nuclear plant comes online, you could have built an entire renewable energy infrastructure for the same cost.
so how do SMRs change that timeline?
Because they're factory built and modular, we're talking about deployment timelines that look much more like renewable energy projects. Instead of decades, you're looking at months to a few years to get these things online. The factory production also means you can achieve economies of scale. The more units you manufacture, the cheaper each one becomes.
That makes sense, but I have to ask about the elephant in the room. What about safety? I mean, nuclear accidents are rare, but when they happen, they're pretty catastrophic. Does making reactors smaller actually make them safer?
This is where the modern design philosophy really shines. These aren't just scaled-down versions of 1970s reactor technology. SMRs incorporate what engineers call passive safety systems. Basically, if something goes wrong, the reactor can shut itself down safely without human intervention or external power. The laws of physics, gravity, natural circulation, things like that, work to make the reactor safe rather than requiring complex mechanical systems.
So it's kind of like how modern cars have crumple zones and airbags that work automatically versus older cars that just relied on you being a good driver?
That's actually a perfect analogy, Donna. The smaller size also means that even in a worst-case scenario, you're dealing with much less radioactive material than you would with a traditional plant. Plus, many SMR designs can be built underground or with enhanced containment systems.
Okay, so we've got faster deployment, potentially better safety, and factory production bringing down costs. But here's what I'm curious about. Who's actually putting money behind this? Because nuclear power has been promising breakthroughs for decades.
This is where SMRs are fundamentally different from some of those pie-in-the-sky nuclear fusion promises. The development is already underway right now, with serious money attached. We're talking about the United States, Russia, China, Canada, and the UK all having active SMR programs with government backing.
And private investment?
Here's where it gets really interesting. So far, about $5 billion has been invested in SMR development, but industry projections show that skyrocketing to $670 billion by 2050. The International Energy Agency estimates we'll have 120 gigawatts of installed SMR capacity by then.
Those are some serious numbers. But who's driving that private investment? Because traditionally, utilities have been pretty conservative about new nuclear technology.
You're absolutely right about utilities being conservative, but the demand is actually coming from an unexpected direction. Think about companies like Google, Amazon, Microsoft, and even Tesla. All of these tech giants are facing a massive power crunch.
Because of data centers?
Exactly. Data centers, artificial intelligence training, blockchain operations. All of these technologies are incredibly power hungry, and these companies have made serious commitments to carbon neutrality. Solar and wind are great, but they're intermittent. When you need to guarantee 24/7 power for a data center that can't ever go down, nuclear starts looking really attractive.
Right. And that's something renewables still struggle with. That baseline power when the sun's not shining and the wind's not blowing.
Precisely, SMRs can provide what engineers call firm power, guaranteed electricity production around the clock. Plus, these tech companies often have the financial resources to be early adopters of new technology, which helps bridge that gap between development and widespread deployment.
I'm also thinking about the political angle here. Nuclear power has been such a political football for decades. Do SMRs change that dynamic at all?
That's a really insightful question. I think SMRs potentially sidestep some of the traditional political battles around nuclear power. Because they're smaller and can be deployed more incrementally, they don't require the massive, decades-long political commitments that traditional nuclear plants demand. A community might be willing to consider a small reactor that can be operational in a few years versus a massive plant that will dominate their landscape for the next generation.
And if there are problems, presumably you're not looking at abandoning a $20 billion investment.
Right. The financial risk is much more manageable. Plus, the modular approach means you can start small and scale up based on actual demand and performance, rather than betting everything on one massive facility.
So where does this leave renewables? Are we talking about SMRs competing with solar and wind, or complementing them?
This might be the most exciting part of the whole story. Rather than competing with renewables, SMRs could end up in symbiotic relationships with them. You could have solar and wind providing power during peak conditions, with SMRs filling in the gaps and providing baseline power. The smaller scale of SMRs means they don't suck up all the financial oxygen in the room. You can still invest in renewable expansion while adding nuclear capacity.
That actually sounds like a much more realistic energy transition strategy than betting everything on one technology.
Exactly. And let's not forget about carbon credits. As carbon pricing becomes more widespread, the zero-emission profile of nuclear power becomes a significant economic advantage. Companies that need to offset their carbon footprints might find SMRs attractive, not just for their reliability, but for their climate benefits.
So what should our listeners be watching for? How will we know if SMRs are actually going to live up to this promise?
Keep an eye on the demonstration projects. Several SMR designs are moving from the drawing board to actual construction over the next few years. The real test will be whether these first-generation units can be built on time and on budget. If they can prove the factory production model works and deliver on those faster deployment timelines, that's when we'll know this technology is ready for prime time.
And I imagine the performance of those early units in terms of reliability and safety will be crucial for public acceptance.
Absolutely, the nuclear industry has learned that they can't afford any high-profile problems with new technology. These early SMR deployments will be under intense scrutiny, but that's probably a good thing. It will force developers to get the technology right before scaling up.
Well, this has been fascinating, Yakov. I think our listeners are going to be surprised to learn just how different this new generation of nuclear technology is from what they might expect. It sounds like SMRs could play a significant role in our energy future, even if they're not the complete solution.
That's exactly right, Donna. SMRs aren't going to single-handedly solve climate change or replace all other forms of energy generation. But they could be an important piece of the puzzle, especially for applications that need reliable, carbon-free power around the clock. The technology is there, the money is there, and the need is definitely there. Now it's just a question of execution.
So for our listeners, this might be worth keeping on your radar, especially if you work in energy, technology, or policy. SMRs represent a fundamentally different approach to nuclear power that addresses many of the traditional concerns about cost, safety, and deployment timelines.
And remember, this isn't fusion power that's perpetually 20 years away. SMR development is happening right now, with real projects and real timelines. Whether you love nuclear power or hate it, this technology is likely to be part of our energy conversation for years to come.
All right, everybody, that's our deep dive into small modular reactors. Thanks for tuning in to Innovation Pulse, and thanks as always to my co-host Yakov for breaking down this complex topic. We'll catch you next time with another technology that's shaping our future.
As we wrap up today's podcast, we've explored Canada's shift towards renewable energy and the promising potential of small modular reactors to complement this transition. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this episode with your friends and colleagues so they can also stay updated on the latest news and gain powerful insights. Stay tuned for more updates.